Kelsey, thank you so much for the time. How you doing today?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
I am doing good, and I am even better now that I'm getting to talk to you. I need to give you a little bit of background here. I first discovered your comedy through your Wrists of Fury show, the Sam Tripoli episode in particular. Sam was going to join my
Wow.
radio show at the time. This had to have been 5 or 6 years ago.
Oh my gosh, okay.
Fellow Armenian Sam Tripoli, and I loved how you did not back down from Sam or any of the other participants on your foosball themed show, and gradually got
Yeah.
into your comedy as well. So it's really cool to get to help to promote these shows at Cap City Comedy Club this weekend. Thank you so much for the time.
Oh man, thank you so much for having watched all of that stuff. It's, such a random thing to have foosball be a part of my life, the way it is, but I'm so glad you watched it and liked it. Thank you.
Don't worry, we won't talk too much about your prowess as a foosball player. People can check out plenty of other conversations about that. In more
Okay.
modern times, amongst the things that you do, not only stand up with you coming to Austin this weekend, you also do Pretend Problems. It's a podcast with Chad Daniels, who was on this show a few months back. And I
Yeah.
really identify with this show, Kelsey, for a couple of reasons. One, like Chad, as he says, I probably have a tinge of the tism, but I'm also interested in the psychology of things, much
Yeah.
like you are too. So I love hearing both sides of an issue, and sometimes I agree with one person, sometimes I agree with the other. For instance, last week's episode, you were talking about how Chad, who's a huge sports fan, he's a Vikings
hmm
fan, and sometimes he'll put a little bit of coin on a game, and you'll
hmm
comment in a moment where it looks like the bet is going in his favor, and that's
Yeah.
upsetting to him because sometimes it ends up not going his favor. That's just how betting goes. But of course,
Yeah.
sports fans are very superstitious people, so it's hard
hmm
not to blame it on you in that moment. I get your side of things though. You're not at the stadium, you're not on the sidelines icing a kicker or something like that. There's no
Yeah.
problem with showing happiness that he's about to win a bet.
Yeah, I'm not flashing anybody. I'm sitting in Minnesota just being like it's all coming from a place of love and happiness, which is what I said on the podcast. I was like, "Oh, I just was excited that it seemed like you were about to win your bet." And listen, like I've played sports my whole life too. I do understand that there are sports superstitions, but maybe I have just experienced it less as a spectator and like I don't bet on sports. And so it's just this whole other world that I did not know about where you just like, you don't assume anything until the game is fully done. And yeah, so we've had a lot of discussions about it now, and it's just so funny because anything in my life that's like remotely woo woo, like feng shui or crystals or anything like that, Chad's like, what? I mean, this is like the weirdest witchcrafty shit ever. And then meanwhile, it's like the sports superstition shit is so next level. I'm like, this is worse than crystals. This is like people are wearing the same sweatshirt and socks over and over and over because it's like their lucky thing. It's like, it's crazy.
Yeah, let's just go ahead and put it out there. The butterfly effect stops as soon as you're not in the immediate vicinity of the activity happening. If you're not either on
Right.
the field, in the dugout, on the sidelines, or maybe in the stands, you have no impact on that game.
Right. Yeah, we had somebody write into our podcast for the episode that's actually coming out tomorrow, who tried to think about, like, okay, yes, she said this one thing, but you also have to think about how many other people in other households are like rooting against this or for this. It can't just be that Kelsey said this one thing and it made it happen. But for Chad, I think he's just like, I think he wants to be able to control what he can control. So he's like, you know what? If within our household we can just not jinx my bets, that would be awesome. I'm like, you know what? It's fine.
Well,
It's
he and I are
fine.
also in that same category that if we see a problem, we're going to speak up on it, even if the problem is manufactured on our own heads. I call it
Yeah.
Larry David disease. It's a relative of Lou Gehrig disease, but instead of you being paralyzed and unable to move anything but your eyes, it's the person that's next to you that is unable to move other than their eyes because of the interactions that you have in public. I know y'all have talked about the stuff on the pickleball court. I have way too many of these problems happen at grocery stores and coffee shops.
Oh my
So I get
God.
why he's trying to cut the problem off at the pass, even if he's not necessarily right here.
Dude, that's hysterical. That's so funny because that is the impact it has
Yeah.
on your partner or your family or whatever. Is like if you're somebody who feels like it needs to be exactly a certain way, in public, with sports, whatever it is, the other person can feel like, oh fuck, okay, I'm just gonna like not say anything, I'm not gonna do anything, because you don't want to, like rock the boat. But anyway, we've had a lot of good conversations, about sports, about his chat in public moments, and
Yeah.
we're very different people in a lot of ways, but we also are able to see each other's point of view a lot and kind of like try to come to the middle a little bit and compromise.
That's incredibly healthy. My wife can sympathize with you, by the way, because there are moments where she's giving me the eyes like this person is doing something so crazy and so inconsiderate to everybody else around. Like, are you going to do something?
Yeah.
And then I do. And then my wife and sometimes my kids are like, Dad, that is the most embarrassed I've ever been in my life. I'm like, did you just want me to let this person continue to throw trash our way at this communal table that we're all sitting at right now? Or did you want me to
Yeah.
say something so she stops doing it?
Yeah. It's so I have not grown up around people like this. Chad is the first person I've ever been around where it's like, oh God, like you actually can say something to strangers. I just would never think to do it. But yeah, I mean, like I talk about it on stage now where like we were on a flight together not that long ago and somebody in our section would not stop farting,
Oh.
which like in my life leading up till now I have just thought like, well, that sucks and that's gross, but I guess this is just going to be a long flight to wherever we're going. And Chad is like, no, 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 like this person clearly has not been like scolded enough or shamed enough in their life. They have to know that they can't do this. And so, I mean, it went on for like 30 minutes.
Oh.
And Chad took his headphones off and just like shouted to our area. He was like, hey, you stink. Go to the bathroom and take care of it. And I was like, I'm going to flush myself out of the airplane toilet. This is the most mortified I have ever been in my life. Because I was like, everybody's facing forward. Like, nobody thinks that he's talking to you. They all think you're talking to me. Like that
Oh,
I'm just with a monster on this plane. It's like, you stink. I'm like, oh my God. So embarrassing. So yeah, it's been an adjustment for both of us.
well, you obviously travel enough to see just how vile people are when it comes to air travel. I feel like that's a lasting impact of the COVID era, as people have just thrown all
Yes.
caution to the wind with regards to how they're willing to handle themselves, either in the terminal or actually on airplanes. I don't ever remember seeing this many people taking their shoes off and
Oh my
exposing their
God.
bare feet on flights, but that happens regularly now. It's disgusting.
Oh yeah, bare feet up on like you'll see people's feet just like framing their TV screen where you just are thinking of like the things you see on a flight where you think, "Oh my God, if the person who's going to sit in that seat next only knew the horrors that just took place in this seat." And like so few people will do a Lysol wipe down or anything like that. You kind of are just like ignorance is bliss. You're like, let's just get to wherever I'm going, not worry about it. But people are feral animals. They're raccoons on planes. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's like it's that same thing that happens at like all-inclusive resorts, or I guess grocery stores or coffee shops, or maybe the pickleball court, where there's like a sense of entitlement that I think
Yes.
enters the fray, where it's like all of a sudden my what I'm doing matters more than anybody else around here, the versus showing an ounce of etiquette.
Yeah, it's really crazy. Like as soon as there's any sort of like labeling of classes within a flight, where it's like first class or like boarding group B, C, whatever, people so quickly just become assholes to the people, quote unquote, below them. And
Yeah.
yeah, it is a weird thing to witness on an almost weekly basis.
So there are airlines now that are talking about trying to eliminate those who are trying to get into that higher caste to get on the flight a little bit earlier. Now I want to say American and Spirit's not the other one. Whoever the other one is, they're talking
Mhm.
about actually having some sort of system that like alerts you if person in group 10, which is the group that I'm always in, by the way. And by the way, I want to be the last person on the airplane, especially if I don't have an overhead bag. I don't want to sit
Right.
on the airplane any longer than I have to, but people want to get on that
Oh my
airplane.
God, you are just like Chad. That's exactly like Chad too. That's so funny.
Well, it's insane. Like, why don't these flights board the back of the plane first and have everybody put their anyhow, whatever. We're not
Right,
going to get on
right.
that tangent right now. But these airlines are basically going to publicly shame people who are trying to cut in line, and I'm all for that. By the way, it's like if you are
Yes.
really that desperate to get on that you're skipping four groups, you deserve to be called out and embarrassed in front of everybody else.
I could not agree more. Think that would be amazing.
So you've been coming to Austin for a number of years now. I know that because you performed at Old Cap City, I'm pretty sure. You've performed at the New Cap City Comedy Club.
Yeah,
The new
yeah.
club in the Domain is beautiful, by the way. For anybody who has never been there,
Yes.
highly recommend a show at some point. No better time than this Friday or Saturday night with Kelsey Cook.
Thank
What do you love
you.
about coming to Austin to perform comedy, Kelsey? Because obviously it's turned into a sort of hotspot for folks to come do their stand-up.
Totally. I just feel like the crowds in Austin are they're so fun. It's like nobody really has a tight butthole, it feels like there. Like it feels like you can talk about what you want to talk about. People are smart, people like want to come out and laugh. And I feel like they also kind of like have their shit together, especially at the Domain, like that location, people aren't getting typically like completely blacked out,
Yeah.
right? It's like maybe less of an intense party vibe over there and more people who like actually want to come to the show and listen and have a great time. So yeah, it's been awesome. I never ended up performing at the old location of Cap City, but I have performed at this new location at the Domain once
Oh,
before.
you
And
did. For some reason, I thought you had been at the old location. Okay.
no, but the Domain is really like, especially for comics as well, such a great road weekend because it's like a beautiful area. We get to walk around, get great food and all that stuff. But yeah, it's fantastic. Comics get really excited to go perform there. Great.
Last question now, Kelsey. I love stand-up. You obviously love stand-up. What do you love about stand-up comedy?
Oh man, I mean, this is my 15th year doing it, and I just love I love that I get to do it for a living, and I love getting to still watch it too. Like it's so fun to sometimes still just go to a show and enjoy it as a fan of comedy. And I don't know. Sometimes I look at my friends who have more traditional jobs or who have kids, and it feels like, oh, they have such a clear purpose. And I think sometimes comedy can feel like silly or unnecessary, like it's just this kind of like fluffy, goofy job. But it means so much to me when people either write into the podcast or come up after shows and say, your comedy or your podcast got me through such a hard time. And like that's such a meaningful part of comedy too that I love so much.
Very cool. You can definitely check Kelsey out at Cap City Comedy Club this weekend. 2 shows Friday, 2 shows Saturday. Tickets at capcitycomedy.com. Kelsey, it's been a real honor and pleasure. Thank you so much for the time. Safe travels to and from Austin this weekend.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Trey. Nice to meet you.
If you're still watching or listening on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or elsewhere, would greatly appreciate you subscribing to this show, and please do like today's episode. Thanks to Gentleman Jesus for the intro and outro music. Hear more of his work at gentlemanjesus.com. Thanks to you for hanging out. For more of the show and to connect on social media, visit booksonpod.com. Talk to you next time on Books on Pod.